We are recording. What's going on, beautiful people? Welcome back to another episode of Overthinking Understanding Podcast. I'm your host, Victoria Moore, and we are back with another episode. What's going on, beautiful people? Like I said, we're back with another episode. We have a special guest, Amy. Amy, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. Hi, Victoria. It's so good to be here. My name is Amy. I'm a trauma recovery coach. I support entrepreneurs and other people in their journey to reconnecting with their authenticity, with their true self, so that they can go on to create incredible lives that blow their own minds and leave them feeling fulfilled and knowing that they're living their purpose.
How long have you been a coach?
Since the technical answer is since 2016, but when I
Oh,
became formally trained, I learned that I've been doing it in some way just naturally all my life. And so when I became a coach, when I was actually going through that initial training, I learned that this is my calling. This is that thing that I had always waited for.
Oh wow. So can you give us some background into that? I know you got into it a little bit. Can you just expand on the background of you getting
Yeah.
professionally certified? I didn't even know that was the thing. So that's amazing. Like congratulations from that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It was the culmination of some childhood visions that, felt like following breadcrumbs. I knew at 3 years old I was going to help people with my voice. And at 3 years old, well, that must mean I'm going to be a professional singer, right? How else do you help people with your voice? And so I use my voice a little differently than singing. I only sing when people cannot hear me, but I come and do things like this and teachings and running courses and working with one-on-one clients. And it's interesting too, because when I was in that original life coach training, our instructor said, we don't help people with their emotions. That's therapy. And I was thinking, I can't ask my clients to lobotomize themselves and check their emotions at the door.
Yeah.
So I'm going to find a way to learn how to support them with their emotions that is safe and helpful. And so I was educating myself on emotional intelligence and trauma and all of these things. And I was actually educating myself on the trauma piece because of things going on in my personal life.
Oh, man.
And then I started calling myself the trauma informed life coach. But then I came across a trauma recovery training and did that. And here I am.
That's amazing. Like literally one of the next questions that I wanted to ask you was like how did your profession shape your approach to healing and growth? And just for you to hit on just a little bit for someone to tell you like we're not talking about people emotions, that's a therapist. I like that blew my mind because I would think trauma is deep rooted. So what would be the definition for trauma for what you do? Because I would think trauma is deep rooted in emotions. Like I speak about it on the show. If check out some of my earlier episodes, stuff I went through as a child, stuff that I went through in the service, and I definitely think that it created trauma, and it's like emotional stuff that I deal with. So that blew my mind. Like so,
Yeah,
I don't want to lose
absolutely.
that. So
Yeah.
how does that work? Like what is the definition for trauma? Different than what the I guess the guy was telling you about.
Yeah, well, the life coach instructor is the one who said we don't talk about emotions, and they didn't know the
Okay,
first thing about trauma.
got you.
So that's how I came to realize, like, okay, life coaching's amazing. It was a fantastic training that I highly recommend.
Okay,
It just wasn't complete.
got
And
you.
I had to go figure out that next piece with emotions and trauma and go on to receive specific training for that. But yeah, to answer your question about the definition of trauma, basically it's an effect of the nervous system. It's an experience of the nervous system. So your autonomic nervous system is that part that controls the things we don't think about, like our beating heart, our breathing. Now, breathing's a weird one because we can control our breathing. We can think about it and affect it. But generally we just breathe without thinking about it, right?
Yeah, I
And
understand.
so the autonomic nervous system is also the same part that triggers the fight, flight, or fear response, or fight, flight, or freeze response when we feel fear, when we feel threatened. And anytime a person feels completely overwhelmed, like whatever the situation is just bigger than they have the capacity for, that has the possibility of creating an internal trauma wound.
Oh wow.
And
Uh,
that's something we've all experienced, right? Being completely overwhelmed, especially as young children.
yes, man. I just want to let you talk. I got a whole outline for the show, but like this is so fast. Like that's literally why I wanted you on the show, and like I say, like I'm gonna say it throughout the show. Like I really appreciate you for coming on and even just speaking to my guests. But that so just like you said, it's a nervous system response. We all get overwhelmed. So would anxiety be like would anxiety play into that role of trauma, or am I like way out of the wheelhouse? Like, cause that
No, you're spot on actually. And here's a little fact that blows people's minds, blew my mind. Any emotional state you can think of, such as anxiety, depression, anything, any physical symptom you can think of, any sign or symptom, whether it's emotional, psychological, physical, can, not always, but can be rooted back in trauma. So trauma wounds that we're carrying around and we don't know we're carrying around, it's just eating away at us. It's wreaking havoc with our hormonal system. It's wreaking havoc with our brain development. And so over time, that can just wear us down in different ways that then show up in the form of anxiety or heart disease or, autoimmune responses. Yeah.
so and like I said, so of course overthinking, understanding for somebody to just say, that's depression, that's anxiety, and we can try to kind of pinpoint. We think it's just a crowded room full of people, or I'm nervous, but like you say, it's rooted in something, and I feel like that ties in so perfectly with the podcast. So when it comes to overthinking trauma, you've been the trauma recovery coach. You obviously have to get down to the root of the issue. How does that work? Like, because obviously I would think we're overthinking it. Like, I'm just depressed. I just have anxiety. Hey, I need to go to the doctor, get this medicine, or do this. But your job is actually to find the deep rooted issue, and it's not just this label of anxiety, depression. Like you say, flight, fight, freeze. Yeah, I'm not just scary. I'm not just wanting to attack people, or this is my response for a reason. How do you do that? Like how do we get to that point?
Yeah. Well, I really wanted to touch on the word overthinking.
Yes, yes, ma'am, of
I
course.
read something recently. It was actually written by a gardener, and the analogy, or the story that he was sharing just resonated so deeply with my work with people. I love the analogy. So he said that in gardening, we tend to miss what the problems actually are. We see that, okay, the leaves are brown, so therefore the leaves are the problem. Let's take these leaves off. Or maybe the branch the leaves are growing on must be the problem, so let's cut this branch off. But then you go on and other leaves start turning brown on another branch, or a different part of the tree dies. It's like, well, why do all of these branches keep dying? Because we never addressed the root. The problem is
Mm,
always
the
in the
root.
root of the plant. Well, the same thing is true for us when it comes to trauma. So depression is not the problem, that's the symptom.
Ooh,
Heart disease is not the problem, that's the symptom. Diabetes is not the problem, that's the symptom.
yes, ma'am.
And we need to address those symptoms, but we can't stop there. That's just the beginning.
Yes, ma'am. That's man. I'm enjoying this episode. We just got started. Oh, if you can't tell, I love that. So how for us, like I said, you're trained, you do it. That's why I want you on the show to bring in your expertise. For a normal person, like how do we learn to diagnose the root? Well, we don't really learn, but how do we understand? Like if it's a now I done listened to this episode and just this little snippet, and I say, okay, I know as a 28-year-old, I just started getting anxious, and I have never been anxious in my life, but I do not know, like you say, it's the root. And I talk to my spouse all the time, like, where did this come from? I have never been an anxious person, but now I'm doing more stuff than I ever have did, and I get anxious all the time now. I'm like, I don't like this feeling. I don't know how to navigate through this feeling, and I cannot tell you where this feeling comes from. Do you got any tools or anything to help for me to get to like okay, this is probably why I'm becoming more anxious, or this is why, like I say, 28 years old, I'm growing this symptom that I never had.
Well, I could come up with endless tools and we could talk till the cows come home, but there are two immediate things that immediately come to mind. One of them is an internal focus and one is an external focus.
Okay.
So for the external focus, my first thought is always culture.
Okay.
So whether we're talking about a family culture, whether we're talking about, our immediate culture and our friend group and who we spend the most of our time with, or even at a national level, whatever culture, we're all part of a lot of different cultures, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So bringing some awareness to what cultures am I a part of and what are their messages, whether they're intended or not, what are the messages I receive?
Yes, ma'am.
And many of us will find once we really start analyzing that, there's a lot of fear messages. And it all comes from the heart. It all comes with the best of intentions. Just for example, I knew a lady once who, when she was a young child, she was attacked by a dog, like
Yes.
brutally attacked by a dog. And so she was terrified of dogs, hated dogs, and she taught her children to fear dogs and to hate them. And so she was trying to be a good mom, right? She was like, I recognize that this is a danger and I want to keep my children safe. And so she did the best she could with the tools that she knew.
Yes, ma'am.
And so just to use that as an example, the invitation might be to analyze her understanding and for her to be able to connect that, okay, dogs inherently are not bad. I had a terrible experience that left all this fear in my body. There's the trauma wound,
Yes.
because we hold that in our body. And I'm carrying that fear with me, and it's like a lens in which I see everything. And so that's the culture,
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
And we all receive those I don't want to say lies. Nobody's trying to lie
The like what, like kind
usually.
of like the what confirmation bias, like we create those
Yeah.
kind of like biases off of what we believe, and then we only see things that align with those. I guess like the bias, like okay, the dogs are bad, and then you can show your kids all these videos of dogs attacking, or a dog will bark, and it's like you see that dog's bark, and it's like yeah they bark, but in her mind it's confirmation to like dogs are bad, and I'm teaching my kids the right thing to fear these dogs. If I'm on the right track, I don't know, but
Spot on.
yeah,
It's exactly it. And so then the invitation there, and this can be hard, and this is where it partners with the internal piece I'll speak about in a second, but the invitation is to bring in more awareness. And how can I look at this differently? Because that confirmation bias works in the other direction too. If I can find all the evidence in the world that dogs are bad, I can also find equal evidence, if not more, that dogs are not the problem.
it,
Humans are.
it
No,
usually
but
always boils down to us.
yeah. But but it's hard to see those positive. It's hard to see anything other than dogs are bad, for example, because our brains are so wired to only see threat.
Yes, yes, ma'am. So, so I know you had spoke when we were setting up this episode about the internal compass, and you hit on it, you kind of a little bit. It's like a external and an internal. The external, what would be the external compass? Like how? What would that be? Like I kind of understood the internal compass from your story. What would it be an external compass?
Well, the external one example would be what we're talking about here with analyzing the cultures that impact us. There's a phrase or maybe just a thought of the five, you're a combination of the five people you're closest to in your life. So,
Oh yeah,
the five people you spend the most time with or something like that.
yes,
So
ma'am.
that could be coworkers, right? So who are you if you look at the five people you spend the most of your time with? Is that who you want to be? Do we need to change who we are spending our time with, even if that means getting a new job, for example? I mean, that's pretty extreme, but sometimes that would be in our own best interest. And so that's just that external piece of analyzing the company we keep
Yes, ma'am.
and the cultural influence that they're having on us. And then that internal compass there's a lot of layers of self-reflection and introspection. But one that I try to help a lot of people with is that internal compass where let's figure out what are your top 5 values.
Yes,
What
ma'am.
are the things, and the tricky part is, what are your top 5 values not coming from a place of fear?
Mm.
Because mom may have taught us, well, you should value this. Culture may have taught us, well, you should value that. But if we can get all those voices out of our head for a second, what do I value? What do you value? And then that becomes your internal compass. And so I take those top 5 core values, and then a client has a decision to make. Well, when we have those unhealed trauma wounds, decision making is hard. It can be very anxiety
Yes.
inducing. Like, you just feel pulled in so many different directions, and you feel like you have to choose the one thing that makes everybody happy, which doesn't exist. But there's that pressure and expectation.
Man.
So let's take all of the options and run them through those 5 core values. What you will sometimes find is that all of the options that make everybody else happy are in violation of your values, or at least one or more of your values, which means we're not being true to ourselves when we choose those things.
Ooh, man,
And
you
just to drill
dropping
down a
some
little
gems.
more, yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of times the one thing that honors all of those core values is, it can feel like the hardest thing in the world to make ourselves do, because it means that we're going to make everybody around us uncomfortable or angry or hurt or something.
And that goes against so much of what the, like you say, the values that have been poured into us, and it's not, like you said, it's not even what we want to do. That's,
Exactly.
man. I'm catching myself trying not to get emotional, but that's literally being in the service. I kind of get caught up on that all the time. It's like you, from what you said from the beginning, like the fear, the values, like you come into the service and they teach you at the bare minimum, you have the army values, selfless service, duty, respect, integrity, all this stuff. You have these army values that personal courage and all of this stuff. At the minimum, everybody in the army should have these values. And then like how you were speaking about this stuff that get poured into you, the army values are great and the army is great on paper. Everything is great on paper. But then, like you said, humans, 9 times out of 10, we are the problem. And trying to live these values on top of coming in with other values. And I'm a master resiliency trainer through the army. Like I was certified through the army. It's a program that it has. And even breaking into master resiliency training, it speaks about values and icebreakers and how, like you saying, we come in with all these different values, and now everything kind of like clashes because it's like the person that my mom and dad taught me to be, which really I always, commend them because I feel like that's why I was so successful in the army. But I catch myself pulling away so much from what the army tells you you're supposed to be, when I mean the people, not the values on paper, because 9 times out of 10, the people that's teaching me are not even living the values, the bare minimum values that the army says that we're supposed to have. So I almost got emotional right there. Like that's, I was like, that's literally, and like you said, you about the the 5 people that you're close to. I'm a culinary specialist. Sometimes we work from 04 to, I said 2000. Well, like 4 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock at night. Sometimes 10, sometimes 7 days a week. We get opportunities to get in breaks, but 9 times out of 10, we're working. We're working. We have one of the most strenuous schedules inside of the service, outside of medics, police officers. It's us. That's it. It's like those three. And we're always working. You're surrounded by these people. And once again, like you say, you just pick up habits or you look at them and you're like, this is not what I want to do. So I'm actually in the process of transitioning out of the service, or transitioning into a better part of the service. Because, like, what all the things that you have said so far, it has created a lot of trauma. It has made me kind of look in the mirror and be like, what, like, I don't want to be this person. Like, I don't want to have to teach my soldiers that the person higher up from us makes bad decisions, but that's just the way the army is. Or that I'm pulling you away from your family to come sit in the middle of the grass, basically wasting our time. But the training is important because that's what you've been taught. Just we're doing it. This is important. It'll come in handy when really the world is evolving. The way that we're gonna conduct ourselves on the battlefield, the way the army is conducting themselves through our regular life. it's evolving. So some of the old tactics that we still have in play is not working. So I just like, yeah. So that just resonated so much with me. Um, but yeah, I'm sorry about that. We talked about personal compass. So does overthinking plays a part in trauma? Like you say with the gardener with the leaves and everything you know said, if I get caught up on thinking like I'm just depressed and I just go down the rabbit hole of saying like depression, because for the longest I wouldn't say I was depressed and I didn't want to cling on to that diagnosis. I always felt like I was stronger than it. But then I'll see myself doing stuff where I'm like, and I'll go look up the definition for depression. I'm like, I think I'm depressed. May even if I do not want to cling on to this diagnosis, I think that I am depressed. Do you feel like that's overthinking, or just like you talking about a flawed compass, or just maybe just a class of values that I've been taught hidden? Like how would you diagnose that?
Yeah, sure. So, first of all, thank you for sharing your experience. I think that
Oh,
there was so much value in everything that you just shared, and that is why I love talking about trauma, because every single time people have those they connect those dots like you just did, and like, yeah, I have this experience or that experience that really fits here. And man, I hear you on the, what was it you said, that you want to be better than that diagnosis, right?
yes, yes, ma'am.
And that is a perfect example of uh the trauma that our culture can teach us, because we are taught to shut down your emotions. Emotions are a sign of weakness, especially certain emotions.
Yes,
We're
ma'am.
taught that certain emotions are bad, other emotions are acceptable. But really, if we could just turn off all emotions, that's everybody's preference.
United States
And
soldier.
so,
Yeah.
yes, yes, yes. My mom trained me to be the perfect little robot, feeling nothing.
Yes.
And I was really good at that for a long time. And certainly in a very left brain sort of way, I was successful. It got me through. But then, the insight that I would like to bring to that is very much a left brain only mentality. And I don't want to demonize the left brain. It's beautiful and we need it.
Yes,
Let's
ma'am.
keep that, but let's also bring in the other side of our head too. And so that we're working as a fully operational human, which
Yes, ma'am.
means feeling that full emotional spectrum, but not being flooded and overwhelmed by it. When it first starts coming along, we can feel a lot of flooding and overwhelming because we don't know what to do. But
Yes,
we
ma'am.
can learn what each emotion means, what message each emotion brings, and how those emotions as messengers are actually supporting us in identifying and meeting our needs in healthy ways. So, from that lens, a diagnosis of depression, for example, really a diagnosis of anything, is just that, it's a diagnosis. We can remove the story that culture has taught us to attach to that diagnosis. And to give a little more understanding on the diagnosis or the experience of depression, when we are, so I'm sure you're familiar with fight or flight. It's
Oh,
when
yes, ma'am.
we feel overwhelmed, we feel flooded with some emotion, fear, anger, whatever, and we go into that. There's a lot of energy, right? Our body is just like ramped up and ready to go, whether we're ready to go and to fight somehow. It can be a physical fight, it can be a verbal fight, whatever that is. And it can also be an internal fight where we're at war inside with ourselves,
Yes, ma'am.
or it can be a lot of energy to help us get away from the situation, get away from the person, whatever that might be. But there's so much energy in that state. If that doesn't work, if we're not able to fight our way through it, if we're not able to run away, our energy will just kind of fall out, kind of bottom out. And we go into that, just this shutdown state where we just lose energy, we lose motivation, we lose hope. That's depression.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And even like I say all the time, I know it was like a joke for the longest, like, oh, it's a mindset thing. But I always say like I'm a mindset speaker. When I looked up the definition of depression, and one of the definition was basically like it's being stuck inside of a mindset. And it just blew my mind and it resonated with what I try to speak of when, just like you say, like we can have this diagnosis, but that doesn't mean we have to cling on to what people tell us this what comes with this diagnosis, and not saying like ignoring it to the fact of yes, these symptoms are here, but let's treat the symptoms, not just give in to the diagnosis. And I speak about it all the time. Like I started my podcast because of it. My little brother was diagnosed with stage 2 cancer at the age of 20, 23, 24, and he's done had it for 4 years now, but he's had stage 4 cancer. He was diagnosed in 2020, like I said, what made me kick off the show. In 2021, he was diagnosed with stage 4. He has had stage 4 cancer ever since then. And like you say, like until I got to witness it firsthand, I would think, stage 4 cancer is just a death sentence. Like you're not gonna be here, not gonna be here that long. But I never would have imagined 3 years later, my brother has seen 3 other birthdays since I'm sorry, 4 other birthdays because he was diagnosed in March. His birthday's in June. Since the diagnosis of having cancer. So just like I say, just to that testament, I feel like sometimes because like we speaking about the responses, I'm a very confrontational person, and it's not just with people. I'm confrontational, but like you say, inside struggles. I don't know how to run. I don't know how to. I be like, I rather face it head on, go through it, and it makes me better. But sometimes it does come off as me being this aggressive or super combative person. But I'm like that with any issue. Like, okay, you tell me I got depression, I'm finna kick depression's butt. Like, I'm not finna sit up here and be like, oh yeah, I take these pills, or and like you say, like it's I do. Some people go through it. It's no problem. I'm not trying to say that me as a person and just Victoria Moore is like no, I don't. This is the diagnosis. Okay, let me overcome this diagnosis. How can I hit this diagnosis head on where I may have depression, but depression doesn't have me. Kind of like I look at with my brother, like he has cancer. Cancer doesn't have him. And I think just sometimes in society we let our trauma or the deep rooted issues of our trauma kind of control us, and we wear that like, oh, because my mom was so mean to me growing up, and it sucks, but a lot of women have that story, like, my mom was mean to me growing up, and that's why it's okay for me to be a horrible woman. And it's like, no, no, like that's I don't want to see how your mom treated you. How can you treat somebody better despite what your mom has did? And like I say, I've learned because I've been through it. I like I say, my first episode, it spoke about stuff that happened to me as a child that I didn't tell my family until I was 18. But when I told my parents at 18, and then I told my siblings and like my immediate family when I was like 20. And I'll never forget the reaction. And like I said, I speak about it all the time. It wasn't so much of like, oh man, I never would have thought that happened to you. It was more like, that's why you act the way that you act. It was like that, like throughout everybody's reaction, it was like, that's why you are how you are. Like, and just like you said about like showing emotions, feeling like I'm very disconnected from emotions. I wasn't disconnected from emotions, but I did teach myself to be very disconnected from showing people emotions. So it's like I would feel it, and I could be mad, I could be happy, I could be sad. My face is just okay, and like you say, or the fight or flight, you piss me off too bad, or it's something that pokes the bear too bad. Now I want to fight. And that's one thing that I credit the army to. Sorry about that. That's one thing. Can you get that for me? That's one thing that I give credit to the army to so much. I couldn't go to the army and just put my hands on people. That was just something that was not a thing. Like I couldn't go to the army and everything could be solved with physically. Even though sometimes it could be. Most of the time it couldn't. So I had to learn to kind of, I guess, exhibit what I was feeling a little bit better. And sometimes in the army, like you say, these values that we be taught, it comes out in yelling. And yelling shuts stuff down. So it was kind of like a fight to be like, okay, I have to be calm. I can't put my hands on you. And in my mind, I thought I was doing good. Like, okay, I'm not putting my hands on people. I'm not fighting. But now you're yelling at people. And yelling is a big trigger and stuff for people. So, like I said, this whole thing well, brought you on, like trauma recovery, and we all live through trauma. Like I said, and I feel like we're in a world, and it seems to be in a society where it's okay to wear your trauma, and not necessarily fix the solution. It's just, oh, you got brown leaves, wear your brown leaves proud. That's great, but oxygen, we need oxygen. We get oxygen from trees now, so we gonna need some green leaves, and we need some green people in our lives. So yeah, I went off on that tangent, but I just had to go. Like, yeah, your points are hitting me, and it's kind of like just clicking. So I appreciate that.
I appreciate that tangent. I'm so sorry about your brother that he is still struggling with cancer,
Yeah.
and at the same time, what an inspiration.
Yes. Yes.
And I love how you phrased that. He has cancer, cancer doesn't have him. You have
Yes.
depression, depression doesn't have you.
Yes, ma'am.
And one thing depression taught me is, and this is hard. I'm hard-headed too.
Yeah. I'm
I'm
so
a fighter
stubborn.
too.
Yeah.
And so I fight myself to my own detriment. But what I eventually learned about depression once I kicked my own butt and wore myself out was to learn to see it. And I can see everything like this now. It was a journey to get here though. I had to come to a place inside where I saw that my depression was trying to help me.
Yes.
Just like I said, our emotions, even those emotions we don't like, they're trying to help us. And my depression and also chronic fatigue, I have chronic fatigue syndrome. So my chronic fatigue, I had to come to see it as my friend. It's telling me to just stop because I don't know how
Relax.
to stop. I'm a fighter. I'm
Yeah.
going to keep fighting. I'm going to keep going.
Yeah.
You remind me, you were very much, I'm guessing, so you can tell me if I'm wrong, but you seem like a truth teller and a truth seeker, and you just hone in for
Always.
the truth.
Always.
It,
Always. Yes, ma'am. That is
yep.
spot on. From
And it's
growing up.
probably gotten you in a lot of trouble throughout your life, hasn't it?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yep. And that's because the people around us aren't ready to see truths when, I mean, think about it for a second. It's almost like if, okay, everybody knows the sky is blue, right? But then you come along and you say, what? It's purple. What are you people talking about?
Uh,
The sky is clearly purple.
it's not
And so
blue.
then
It's
they,
not
they
blue.
think you're crazy and
Yeah.
they think that you're attacking them and calling them stupid for thinking it's blue.
Yes.
We're just in different places. And so because of that, because I was also that truth seeker and that truth teller, getting myself in all kinds of trouble, I just kept going, following the truth, which just
Yes,
had
ma'am.
me going on and on and on. And my depression and my chronic fatigue had to come up and like say, stop,
Yes.
just feel,
Yes.
and
Yes.
just be. And I
Yes.
had to learn how to just be. And that's hard when you go through all of, our whole life being brainwashed to do.
Yes, ma'am. And what you said about the color, like, one thing that I've learned from being educated, like when and you said it from like hitting on from the beginning of this episode, the fear response of how people teach you, like the lady and the dog, and like she was attacked by a dog, and a fear response had her teaching her children something else. When I, like you say, I'm definitely, like you hit it spot on. I'm definitely a person of, but like seeking the truth. And when I'm going through my situations, like how most people do, I found religion. I found religion, and then once again, you seeking the truth. I learned that I don't want to follow religion, but I still believe in Jesus Christ and I believe in the Bible. That's what has kept me afloat, and been so fortunate to be blessed throughout my life. That is what I contributed to. And with me saying all that, it's about I learned where like my family, friends, and even to this day, how you say we could see the world different. A lot of people are just teaching us off of fear. You don't know any better. So with that, it helped me, like you say, the depression, the anxiety, and just anger. Trauma itself is a tool to help in my mind. Okay, you know what? Why am I getting upset? You don't know any better. Like you
Right.
don't know better. So now I started, even still to this day, like with in the army, you got so many. It's such a bureaucracy. You got supervisors on supervisors on supervisors, but none of us really. All of us could be fired. None of us really own it. It's just sound signed down to us. You just realize how much people don't know, and they just go off of what they were taught. And if you were not taught correctly, you're not gonna be passing out information correctly. And even with my soldiers, like they get so tired of like, so more thinks she always right. I be passionately wrong all the time because I do. I think I'm right, but I be passionately wrong. And but 9 times out of 10 when I'm right, it's because I'm like, this is at the TM, and it goes against what another NCO or another leader has taught them. I'm like, this is the TM. And when I finally pull it up in regulation, they like, okay, this is not just her way. And I try to drill that into my subordinates' heads, like, I don't care if you think so I'm more smart, stupid, dumb, or whatever. My job is to teach you what the Army wants you to know. So instead of me just going off of experiences or memory, I pulled up the TM. I'm teaching you directly regulation, TMs. Of course, it doesn't always work because it's paper. So an idea can be great on paper, but when it's time to execute it, that's when you're able to tweak it. So that definitely helped me out so much, just learning, like, people are scared. People are,
Mhm.
hey, save your money. Like, that was one of my parents' biggest thing. Like, save your money, save your money, save your money. And then when I actually started getting into the service and dealing with money, it's like, saving money is great, but it's other things that we could do with our money. And even just looking back, when I started saving money and realizing, like, how much stuff that your parents or people around you teach you that they never did. I'm like, you didn't do this process. Like, you've been teaching me to save money. I tell this story frequently. When I was a child, like I said, I got into church. I started tithing. I started tithing my first little job at a grocery store, and the preacher taught that tithes belong to God, so you do not spend your tithes. I had over $600 worth of tithes saved up in my room. I was putting my money up. I had cashed my paycheck, putting my money up. My father comes around, and I'm a kid. I'm like 15, 16. He sees a big wad of cash. We didn't come up in bad neighborhoods, but they want the best either, right? So he see a wad of cash, and he like, why you got all that money? And I'm like, it's my tithes. Like, I can't touch God money. I'm just adding to it. But we hadn't been to church. I would more frequently go to church with my grandmother. Another reason I started the podcast. But I would go to church with my grandmother. So when we didn't go to church, I didn't. I still wouldn't touch the money. The money would just add up, and then when I do go to church, I'll put the money inside the envelope. But I'll never forget my dad's reaction. He came through the door, he seen all the money, he was like, why do you got all that money? And I was just like, oh, that is my tithes. Like, I'm not spending God's money, it's my tithes. And the look on his face was just blown away. And I didn't know until years later. He was like, I wasn't saving my tithes up like that. And just to basically, he was telling me I motivated him, or it was an inspiration. I'll say more than motivate. It was an inspiration to him. Like, a little child has that much money, and she's so in belief of her belief that she will not touch it. And I was just blown back, like, but y'all was telling me about tithes, so you weren't doing none of this. Like, y'all was just where were you teaching me this information from? So, like you say, being somebody who seeks the truth, or but just heavily believes in the truth. A lot of stuff comes from my heart and my experiences, and if it's not my experience, I won't speak on it because I don't know. And into my mind, it feels like I'm lying because I'm trying to tell you something that I have never did. So I only try to speak about things that I did, and within doing that, I have did so much. Whereas, like, I'm speaking on this thing, but I could tell people, hey, I'm a cook in the Army. I'm a podcast creator. I used to be a flight instructor, a flight attendant. I got two businesses. Like, I actually do this stuff, and I'm able to get this information. So I just wanted to hit on that point because, like I say, I know it's probably going to resonate with a lot of viewers, but it just hits so much home where, like, people that teach you out of fear, people that teach you out of fear, out of trauma, and they sometimes they have never did it. They just going off of values, just tying everything back in, just going off of values and stuff that they have been taught, either good or bad, but they don't really have a book or guide on how to do it. So that's why I think people like you are so freaking important in today's world, where you're able to help us navigate through these different changes and things that, like I say, we can go back and ask our parents, like, why did you teach me that? Oh, because my mom taught me. And then I'll go ask my granny, like, why did you teach my daddy them that? Oh, well, that's just what I was taught. It don't help nothing. I don't now I don't understand, and you don't understand. And now I'm just here with this belief, or like you said, not even my belief, and it creates that inner fight with yourself. So I just wanted to hit on that point. I thank you so much for that.
Yeah, I'm really glad that hit home.
So, on on average, how many clients would you say actually have, like, those breakthroughs? Because I know, like, when you first start something, it's like kind of like how I am now. Like, I hear you, it'll click, and it's like, wow. But then, kind of like working out. You start working out, the first run, depending on how you are, if you in shape. I mean, I'm sorry, if you were in shape at one point in time and you kind of getting back into shape, the first run feels lovely. You like, yes, I'm back doing something that makes me feel good. But somebody that was never in shape, the first run sucks. It's horrible. It's
Mhm.
like, no, I don't want to do this no more. I don't see no point into doing this. If this is the road to being healthy, put me on the sidewalk because I don't want no parts of it. So like how like working with clients, how is your experience? Is it more like a fight to get them to understand the root issue and you have to be like the bad guy for a couple sessions or however you do it? Like I said, I don't know. How do you work through that?
I love that analogy of, being in shape, getting back in shape, or never been in shape. That's pretty accurate. So it really depends on where the person is when they come to see me. And I will work with people when I can recognize that they're at a certain level. And, I have colleagues that will work with them when they're at different levels, and I can do that, but I choose to work with people who are at a certain level. And really, what I break it down to is, are they in a victim mentality or not? And if
Mm,
they are in that victim mentality, to what degree? So
okay.
there's two levels of victim mentality. On the maybe the lighter level, if you will.
Okay.
Doesn't feel lighter when you're in it, but we all do that. We all have moments when we have actually been victims, especially as children. Somebody did something to us.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
in that moment we are a victim. But that victim mentality is different than the moment of being victimized, right? That
Yes, ma'am.
mentality is when we take those feelings, those beliefs, and carry it with us. And we can use it as an excuse, like you were sharing earlier. Well, my mama treated me some way, and so here I am treating other people some way. And it's like, yes, mama treated you that way and that hurt. And so let's take responsibility. I used to complain that all of the adults in my life made a mess of my life, but yet I was expected to play mop up crew. That's not fair.
Oh yeah.
And and I was stuck in that victim mentality, keeping myself held back for a long time until I finally had to buck up and say, yes, it's not fair. It's absolutely not fair. And it's my life. If I want to
Exactly.
go live it, then I got to clean it up first.
Yes, ma'am.
And so that's that first level of victim mentality, is being able to come to that point where it's not fair and I have to do something about it.
Yes, ma'am.
Um, it's not fair and I don't know what to do, but I'm willing to learn.
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
willing to try. So
Yes,
that's
ma'am.
one thing. And I will take those clients every day. And then
Yes.
there's another type of victim mentality where we are so shut down that we can't see that there is any possibility, that there is any option. I have worked with those clients and thoroughly enjoyed, walking through their process with them. It takes them a lot longer.
Okay. Okay.
And there is all the hope in the world. And I want everybody to hear that there is always all the hope in the world, always. What they need is one person to really connect with, one healthy enough person. That
Yes.
can be a coach, that can be a therapist, that can be their best friend, it can be anyone, but one healthy enough person that is going to hear them and see them and love all over them unconditionally,
Yes.
endlessly, and eventually, I think of our souls sometimes can be like dry dirt.
Yeah.
And when
Yes,
that
ma'am.
dirt gets so dry and you water it, the water just runs off. It's not able to soak
It's
in.
not able to penetrate. Yes,
Right.
ma'am.
But when somebody is surrounded by enough love for long enough, it starts being able to penetrate. And then
Yes,
they can
ma'am.
start moving up that ladder where they're able to bump up into that upper level of victim state where they're like, okay, I woe is me, and I'm ready to start moving out of this. And it's like being on a fence where you're toggling back and forth, and you're going to have moments and days or weeks or months where you're back in that victim mentality, and then you're like, oh, wait a minute, I don't have to do this, I can do something about it. I don't know what, so back into the victim mentality, but oh, wait a minute, I have options, let me figure that out. Yeah.
Man, like I say, I love all of that. I could just sit here and let you talk. Like this is a free session for me. I feel like I should pay you after this. But just to speak on that, like you say, you made a lot of great points, and that's hard about mental notes. But just to speak on it, like you said, like being stuck. I was the same way. Like it's like a I think it's like a meme that goes around social media, and it's like I didn't ask to be here, and now you telling me I got to take care of myself, and it's
Exactly.
like, and I think about it, like you said, as an adult, you could feel that way. Like adult, no children. I'm sorry. Okay, sorry, thought I had a sneeze coming. As an adult, no children, you could feel that way. It's like you can make bad decisions, you could say, because at the moment it only affects you. And I just think about, like, okay, once you have kids or you have a spouse or you have a job, now your actions of being a victim doesn't just affect you. Like now it affects everyone around you, and you kind of get to see, like, oh, it's kind of like a mirror. Like they say, how you treat people 9 times out of 10 is how people will treat you. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes you could be the nicest, most genuine, kind person that you can, and some people are just stuck. And like you say, they're hardened, and they're going to act the way that they act. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person. They're just not able to receive it at the moment. But to just learn that yes, I am a victim, but I don't have to be a victim. Like I was a victim. I'm not a victim anymore. Like I'm able to take control of my life. And that's I was the same way. Like I said, I left the house. I signed a contract at 17. Like I needed a parental, because you got to be 18 and come into the service. But you need a parental consent form. And in my military records to this day, you go through my records. That's the first thing that's in my records. My parental consent form. And I'll never forget, like my dad was on board with signing it to a certain extent, because he like he believed in me. My mom was scared. She like, you wasn't the best grades in school, all of this, and she didn't sign it, and then it just happened to come around 18, and I've been in the service ever since. And just to watch myself blossom, like you said, I went with trauma, I went with fear, I went as hard and dirt, and now I look around and I have blossomed into this beautiful garden, and I can see where people actually want to come pluck the flowers that I have. Like, oh, so more, or she's doing this, or you doing that. And don't get me wrong, I'm still myself. I'm still Victoria. So on the outside, I'm still that person that kind of disconnected of showing other people emotions that's not the inner circle. So people they could hear me or hear stories about me, and they could be like, yeah, that's some, or that's this person. But the people who work with me and actually know me, they love me. And it's kind of like the same way where you learn that, okay, I don't have to be this, where, like you say, the left and right brain. I don't have to be just this one type of person. I don't have to be this victim over here, or I don't even have to be a hero. I could be human. I can have these both levels of myself and put this out into the world, and it just makes it feel better. And that's when you learn, like, okay, this person's kind of giving me a bad vibe, and it's triggering something from childhood, but this could be a bad person. My trauma could be in this instance helping me to do something better. Or like you say with fatigue, like I'll go and I'll get so tired, and my spouse would be like, just take a break. And in my mind, it's like, I can't take a break. I've been doing this 18, like, no, it's no breaks to be taken. It's nobody to come pick me up if I fall. I can't take a break. And then your body will just tell you sit down. I'm like, all right, I gotta take a break. I guess I'm forced to take a break. So like I say, once again, the stuff that you do is so important. So working with the clients, how, like, do you do session? How does, like, what does coaching look like? And I said all the time, like when I bring coaches on, if Coach Amy was my coach, what would that look like for Victoria?
Yeah, a couple of different things. I teach classes, so that's one option. But as far as like a straight up coaching session, it is lots of questions. So I don't know if you've ever heard of the Socratic method. For anyone that might be familiar with the phrase the Socratic method,
Something else.
Socrates taught by asking questions. He
Mm,
believed his students knew more than they realized they knew. And so
mm.
he would just ask a lot of questions,
Overthinking,
which
understand.
and so that's what coaches do. We ask a lot of questions. Now, as a trauma recovery coach, I also provide psychoeducation, which is what a lot of what you and I have been talking about on this episode is that those are the teaching pieces. What is trauma and how does it impact the brain and how does it impact the body and things like that, because then that helps us understand. So it's like this toggling back and forth between I recognize that my client has all of their answers inside. They might not know that. And even if they're willing to be open to that fact, they might not know where to look. And so I'm going to ask questions to help tease it out. And that's when those
Mm.
clients have those aha moments like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just connected these dots that have been in front of me my whole life and I never saw it. But there it is, plain as day, and I get it now. And so there's that toggled with that psychoeducation of teaching them, okay, here's why you had that experience. Here's why you have felt like a victim or you have been stuck or whatever the case may be.
And just like I'm saying, like I know I bring up the values and like the parents and stuff, but just for you to say that, like coaches, that's why I say coaches, therapists are so important. A lot of stuff that and like I said, it will speak for personal experience, kind of like starve you as a child. You create this thirst, like I create for someone to be able to hear me out and speak. But sometimes we attach it to like your significant other or your kids, and when that person is not a trained coach, like I'm not Coach Amy. I don't know how to help you through this trauma. For the most part, I can do my best. I'm not certified in that, so I may help somewhat. But then I'm overwhelmed, or now you're triggering something from me, and I'm pulling back. A lot of times we are taught those that at home, like nothing. Like we were big in my community. Like whatever happens in these four walls, stay in these four walls. But now somebody getting treated bad, talked to, physically, mentally abused or something like that, we don't really speak on it because that's what we are taught is not to speak on it. So now therapy is out the question. I'm not finna go tell on my parents. I'm not finna go tell on my mom's friend's child or whatever. Like this is not right. I just you you learn like okay it happens in cycles. So it'll be here and it'll be gone in a minute. I just supposed to deal with it. And it's like no, that's not a good thing that we have been taught. Therapists are great. I don't have to sit here and trauma dump on my friends or my children when some I could literally go to somebody that get paid to do it. And that's literally what they're there for. And it makes you feel better as a person to have the coach or a therapist or both. Because like I said, I do therapy and I have coaches and I love it. And on top of that, I have mentors in the service, and you learn to kind of get this outside help where once again, like I said, in this society, I feel that you're not necessarily get taught to get the help more than it's okay. Go to people that's telling you it's okay to be the way that you are, which is fine to a certain extent, but you could get help and it's okay to get help. People are out here to get help, not to just play. Like I say, yes, man, you do not have to walk around as this hurt, messed up person that's, exuding this bad energy when, like you said, it could be so simple. You could bring it out of them. I said in my podcast all the time, overthinking, understanding. I feel like people already know, but we overthink the answer. We get into where we reiterate it so much, or we have all this information coming to us so much with technology in the world that you forget you know the answer. It's just like it's kind of like we get taught to you don't know the answer, so I have to go search it. And I come to you and you get to asking me questions. It's like, Victoria, you know this stuff already. Or what Jane Doe, you know this stuff already. But you have been taught to question yourself and go seek outside help. Kind of like what you said earlier with the internal compass. Sometimes our internal compass is out of whack, like a regular compass. It doesn't work well if it's surrounded by metal. You take it outside where it's supposed to work, and it's back fixed. So kind of like what you were saying with connecting with the wrong people or looking around and being like, man, all of their compasses are out of whack too. So now you got out of whack compasses giving bad directions, and for what we're speaking on, bad advice, bad ways to fix it. You got six victims talking to each other and telling each other how to be a victim. So, like I say, so 2024, we here. I'm able to talk to you. Never met you. Got this. Technology's working great. Are you able to be a coach online, or do you prefer in-person classes? How does it work?
I've actually always been online.
Oh
I was
wow,
online before the pandemic. My entire business has only ever been online,
that's amazing.
which is, you know, it's actually been an incredible gift. I mean, it's a beautiful gift of our times. And while we can all be on computers too much, that's a valid argument. At the same time, it gives me the opportunity to work with a global clientele, which is incredible because I love meeting people from all over, from different backgrounds, and so I get to connect with people from different countries, and then it's just this I don't know, new novel thing to get to know each other.
And it yeah, and like I say, like when I was a flight attendant for the army, I
Hmm.
got to experience all these different cultures. Like I've been to Prague, Chile, Brazil, Berlin, all these different places, right? That a country girl from Texas never would have thought that she would have ended up at. And for like what you saying, I to watch going to these places and connecting with these people, it was cool. It was amazing to see it. But creating this podcast in 2020 and just being able to look and be like every continent that my podcast has downloads or listeners in, I have been to, but I feel like I connect more through the podcast because I'm not able. I could go to like going to Prague. I'm with the team. Like you got to stay close knit. You might be able to venture out, but you might just get a hey hi, or even if I talk to 2 3 people, I'm able to put this podcast out to the world. And if 100 people want to download it in Africa, Asia, whatever, they could download it. I probably would never have the potential, no matter how many of these places I went to go and connect with 100 people the way that I'm able to do it online. So I definitely think that's amazing because the help is sometimes is out. The help we need is sometimes out in the world, and we need to go out in the world to create that help or safe space for somebody to talk to. Uh, I I feel like I said, I feel like I done got a free session. Is it anything that you feel like that we haven't covered that you want to cover with my listeners, or just even just to promote yourself? Is it any other topic or anything that you want to speak on?
Yeah, one, I really want to just speak to what you just said, with our family rules, our cultural rules telling us, I think we're all taught in different ways and to different extents, don't air the dirty laundry,
Yes, ma'am.
things like that, or that we are betraying. If we need help in some way, we're betraying those that may have impacted us. Trauma is sometimes called the great disconnector. It disconnects us
Mm,
from the truth of who we are.
yes.
And well, if I'm not allowed to be Amy, then who am I?
Yes.
Well, I have to have my mom tell me, I have to have my dad tell me, my grandparents, culture, my teachers going through school. I have to have all of these people tell me who I should be, who I
Exactly.
need to be, what I need to be doing because they know better than I do.
Mm,
And so then I'm going around and I can't get it right no matter how hard I try. I just can't get it right. Well, it's because that's trauma. That's our trauma identity. And we think that that's who
mm,
we are. And because we can't get it right, we think, oh, I'm broken. I'm stupid. I'm less than somehow. I'm not lovable. There's something wrong with me. I have no value because no matter how hard I try to do what all of these people say I need to do, I can't figure it out and just make
mm.
everyone happy and just get it right.
Ooh,
So the problem, we are never going to get it right when we're in that trauma identity because that's not who we are.
that's not who you are.
Yeah.
That I'm happy you said that. Just like how you saying like what it's kind of like how people say they wear many different hats,
Hmm.
clothing, personalities, whatever. Who you are and your character is it lives within you. It's you, like you say, it's your soul. A hat can be taken off, but if you
Hmm.
let somebody make you say like you're a daughter, so you are a daughter, and this is how I act as a daughter to my mom. But you acting as a daughter to your mom does not work for you acting as a wife to your husband or as a teacher or and a parent to your kids or a coach, like you say, like a coach to your clients. Like that is I feel like that right there, boom, whole nother episode. Like it's something that like we kind of get suffocated by somebody by your trauma identity. I think I'm gonna name the episode that. I love that right there. Trauma identity. Like to get kind of like where your trauma identity. And once again, I think it goes into what I was saying, where like you kind of be this person, but you're like, now you're depression. I am the poster child for depression. When you do not have to be the poster child for depression or anxiety or whatever you have going on. Like mistakes happen, trauma makes people, like they say, hurt people, all of this.
Hmm.
You can work past it, but just understanding that, like you say, letting down the people who have taught you this, and that was a big thing for me. It's beauty in learning that letting them down is helping them. Like it's like at the moment they don't want you doing this. Like at the moment, hey, I'm not child signing off for my child to go into the service. And this has been one of the biggest blessings for I say my life and even towards my family. Like so much stuff that I've been able to do and provide, it came from the service. It's me starting in the service. Not saying that I wouldn't have been successful outside of the service, but it was successful. And I won't say that I had the support that I felt like I should have, but once again, I don't I don't have to live in as my mom daughter, hey, I probably should have went to school or, college. But now I'm like, I do college. I'm finishing up bachelor's, and it's just amazing to see like how you say getting outside of that trauma identity. Cause right now somebody's done labeled you an apple and you are orange the whole time. And
That's
you
right.
do not know how to act as an orange because you keep getting told, as my daughter, you would do this. As an apple, you will be sweet. And then it's like, what? Like, as an apple, you will be red or green. And it's like, huh? Like, I don't feel like that. I look in the mirror and I see orange, but I don't know an orange apple. So, hey, I must be, but I must still be an apple because that's what my parents told me about. So, yes, like stay in that stay in that space right there. Like I love that. How do you work with people to get outside of that?
Well, I work with them a lot to bridge that gap where they feel like they're betraying, their family or their religion or their culture or whatever it is. There's so many layers there that try to keep us in our trauma identity. And so it becomes a matter of holding that both and. Kind of like when we're sitting on that victim mentality fence, like, if I lean too far this way, I'm in victim mode. If I lean too far this way, I'm more empowered. I'm like, okay, I can get myself off the fence. And then I sit back, right? So it's the similar where I have these trauma wounds. And let's just, pick on mamas for a minute, because as a mother, I've hurt my children. Absolutely. And we all do. Hurt people. And every person has wounds. And so we're all hurt people, and we're all going to hurt other people in our own blind pain.
Isn't
And so I have to own the fact that I have I have hurt my children, for example. That does not say anything about who I am. That says everything in the world about where I am in my journey.
it?
And so when my clients can start to see that, okay, I am not disrespecting my mother or my teachers, whatever those teachers look like throughout life, I can honor them where they are
Yes,
and
ma'am.
recognize that the pain they inflicted on me is not who they are, it's where they are. Just
Mm.
like the pain I'm carrying right now is not who I am, it's where I am.
Ooh, yes, yes. And even with that, learning that, because that is a recent revelation that I had. Like I said, I'm 28 now. I'll say about 20, 25. And that's another thing. Like I said, getting outside of the house and just learning. Even with the service now, you have so many soldiers coming in older than I did. And I'm like, by the time I was 19, I was a sergeant. Man, by the time I was 19, 20, I was a sergeant. Everybody that I was in charge of was older than me. And there's so much responsibility that came with it. And now we get recruits that are like 34, 23, and they're not acting the way that I think that they should act. 'Cause I'm like, I had this so much of this responsibility at such a young age. But just to hit on the part where you were saying where I don't want to lose it, we all have that way of like hurt people, and this is not it. I used to get stuck, and it's like you'll beat yourself up. Like, man, I did this, so I'm a bad person. Like, it's not no fixing it. I don't care how many, and like I say, you have your belief in what I value, being a Christian. Like, okay, it's not no good deeds that I could do to make this bad deed go away. But even that's going off of the line with what I'm taught and what I take from the Bible. Is like you surrender what you did to the Heavenly Father and you keep it pushing. But in the world, like I say, sometimes, and it's funny because like people are aware of this. I'm depressed. I have anxiety. I did this. I did that, and they're aware it as a badge of honor. But they would. But it's harder to get the switch to be like, hey, I did that, but I am not this person. Because for the world, like the world will be like, hey, you're depressed. You did this. We know it. We got these symptoms. But if you say, hey, I'm not, I have these symptoms. I have these symptoms, but I'm not always this person, or I'm not this bad person. The world say, no, don't forget. don't forget you hurt your child. You're a bad, you're a bad mom. Hey, don't forget you hurt your brother. You're a bad sibling. Nope, nope, nope. Hey, you're a bad daughter. Remember, your mom didn't even want you to go and do that. So I don't care how much success that you have had in the service. You're a bad daughter. You didn't listen, and it's in the world will be like, yes, bad, and it's like, no, like it's something that happens, and I think that's kind of like stipends people growth. It's like, man, I'm bad. So I, like you say, stuck in the victim, and then also now you pulled into the values of like, no, like I'm bad. It doesn't matter. It's not even a victim or not a victim. I did it, and I'm bad, and there's no fixing this bad thing that I did. How do you escape out of that? Like the world, and then it's be like, then on the same time, the world will turn it back and be like, you need to be a better, person that's contributing to society. How? You're telling me that I cannot come back from this mistake. And that's one thing, like I said, I give the credit to the Bible, to my grandmother. Like that's, just teaching me and understanding that people say so much, the Bible is this, the Bible is that, and just learning, like you learn it for yourself. Like you say, being a truth seeker, okay, the pastor says this, my mom says this, my grandmother says this. Read it for yourself. Like you said, you read the word and study the word, and it'll reveal yourself to you. Like I said, for my belief, I don't never push it on anybody, but just as you saying, being a coach, it's just like, don't let people tell you that you have to be this person or this trauma identity that has been created. Because like you say, you will never know yourself, and you'll suppress yourself. Now your internal compass is off. Now you're fight, flight, especially if it's flight, you run away, and now you run away from everything you have going on, including yourself. So now you're not taking care of yourself. You're not taking care of anything around you, and you're not understanding that, man, it's because I think that I have to be this person, or that I cannot be better than this person. They're not even at the victim mentality yet. They just like, I'm just here. Like, I'm not pointing fingers at nobody. It's just like, I'm here and I don't know how to get out of here. So hey, like, I'm not even saying it's your fault, your fault. I just saying the world tells me this is how I have to be. So that was a great point that I did not want to get away from. That's amazing. Um,
I'm
on
sorry,
the
go ahead.
No, go ahead, go ahead. I'm so sorry.
I was just going to say that that's exactly what I help people with right there. That's the core of it right there, is helping them understand the difference between that trauma identity versus their actual identity. And let's reconnect with your actual identity. And then we can work through the layers of the trauma identity that doesn't fall away. Some of those layers will just fall away more easily than others, just with a little bit of knowledge and awareness. And then other of those layers are such deep-seated wounds. It takes time. I call that our trauma obstacle course. So there's me, who I actually am, and there's this goal, this, my life purpose, or, something I want to achieve in life, but I can't figure it out because there's this trauma obstacle course in the way. So let's first get you out of that trauma identity, back into your own identity and who you actually are. And then we can work through that trauma obstacle course and get you where you want to be.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And you hit on what I was gonna ask. Like, even getting people past that trauma and having them thrive outside of that person. Like, how does it? Because being a coach, like I say, been going through therapy, even if you're able to shorten up the sessions, I don't never want to necessarily stop going to therapy. Just like I don't want to, necessarily stop using the Bible. How does it work being a coach? Like, are people like, you help them get past it, and then it's just like they're set off into the world to do this stuff on their own, or is it more like a lifelong walk? How does it work?
That's a great question, and it's going to be different for everyone.
Okay.
So some people have more trauma wounds than other. Some, even if they have fewer wounds, they might be deeper wounds, causing more pain. So everybody's in a different place in their journey. And I meet people at different points along their journey. So some people will come work with me for a few sessions, and then they're like, okay, you got me past this big major block in my life, and I feel good now. I may or may not be back later, but right now I feel solid. And then there are other people who, yeah, I can work with a client for years because we're just uncovering so many layers.
Yes.
And it also gets to a maintenance point. So there's no such
Yeah.
thing as healed and done.
Yes.
You know how when you break a bone, that bone, the initial break can heal, but you can tell the weather by it. You get like all achy if it's going to rain or something like that. Or
Yes, ma'am.
or like I broke a toe years ago,
Oh man.
and now that toe is really sensitive. If I bump it, if I, stub my toe, it hurts like crazy.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
so it's like that never fully goes away. There are parts of you that still remember that original wound. And so we can work through layers and layers and layers and get to a maintenance level where, okay, that initial wound is healed, but now there are all of these side effects.
Yes, ma'am.
Sometimes I bump into it again, and I got to learn how to deal with what happens when I accidentally bump into it, for example.
Yes, ma'am. That's and that's what I was, and I can understand that because that's what I was thinking. Like trauma, new situations kind of happen. Trauma kind of happens. So like you say, I could understand it. But definitely like speaking, going through therapy. Like sometimes it's like we don't have necessarily nothing to talk about, and it's like you say a maintenance phase. And I
Yep.
always contribute stuff to working out because I have had personal trainers, and I'm just in a service, and you go through where I've been in the best shape of my life and then where it's been like not the best shape but I'm able to do what I need to do to be successful and on the army's physical fitness test. And it's the same way throughout life. If one thing that I can say therapy and like I say my belief in Jesus Christ has taught me is embracing the trauma. Like it's kind of get to a bad point where I'd be like looking for something to go on because it's like in my mind it's like I'm ready for another growth, like I'm ready for another step. And when a trauma comes along or a situation that comes along that makes me feel uncomfortable or whatever hits, I'm like, oh, I'm ready. Like, yes, this situation came to me because I'm ready for it. And just like how you said about like victim mentality, like I haven't seen myself in that way for so long because now I have this bias where it's like, no, this is to come and make you better. So
Yeah.
regardless, it's kind of like I guess like finding a silver lining in situations. Like what can you learn from this? Even if somebody like the and like I say, I still go. We're human. I still go through the thing. Where I just sometimes I want to punch people in the face. That is the quickest way of conflict resolution in my mind. Still to this day, like you make me mad enough, I want to punch you in the face, but I can't do that. So it's like, what can I do? 9 times out of 10, I'll pray for the person because on the belief side, that's what I'm taught. You pray for your enemies, and then through the counseling side, it's just okay. What can you do better? Like what can you do in this situation? Because people you can't change how people act. I can't make people go get help. I can't make people drop their trauma identity. But what can you do on your end to make it better? And that it makes it. I'll say with me, it just makes it feel better. You learn that I have the power to control all this stuff that I did not think I had the power to control. So that's
Exactly.
amazing. I think that's
I've
amazing.
always referred to myself as a professional lemonade maker because life threw me loads of lemon and I can sit around making all these sour faces all day long, or I can add some sugar and turn it into something beautiful.
Something beautiful, something that's gonna sell out. But wonderful. Yeah, I like that personal. That's why I say mindset. Mindset it take you so many places, and that's why I would say like I'm a mindset speaker. And in regards to people make jokes and oh it's a mindset thing, but it truly is. Like if
Mhm.
you start breaking down that is the way that your brain thinks. That is the way that your brain thinks, and I'm telling you, it could be changed. You do not have to be in this thought process. So like you say, I got all these lemons and now it's just tart. You just giving out lemon wedges. No, you don't got to do that. You could add a little sugar. You could add a little water. You could candy them. You do all types of stuff, and now you have a sweet thing instead of this sour product. So how can we reach out? Like how can we reach you? If like you say you're online, how can listeners, everybody in the world, like reach out to if we want Coach Amy?
Yeah, people can go to my website, ascensionwellnesslife.com, and they can book a free discovery call. It's an empowerment session where we can just get to know each other a little bit. And I help people identify what their next step might be that may or may not include me. And if it does not include me, then I will help them find the next, what their next step is in their best interest. So they can visit that website at ascensionwellnesslife.com. They can also shoot me an email, amy@ascensionwellnesslife.com, and ask me any questions.
Okay. Is it A- Amy at essentialwellness.com? Like all love it. Ascension. Ascension Life Wellness.
ascensionwellnesslife.com.
Life.com.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And then do you have like any Instagrams or YouTubes, anything like that that you're able to be reached on?
Yes, Ascension Wellness on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Instagram and LinkedIn.
Okay. And while we wrap up, like I said, is there anything that you feel like we need to speak on or that we haven't touched on that will help contribute to the listeners being a better person?
There's always hope.
Yeah.
There's always a way. Every single person has the answers that they are seeking.
Mhm.
And sometimes we need a guide to help us find them. So whether that guide is me or that guide is you, Victoria, or their best friend or whoever, it could be a stranger that they meet tomorrow. I hope that they at least accept that they can rest in knowing that there is always hope and they can always find their way back home to themselves.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for coming on to the episode. I have enjoyed this episode. I probably gonna be watching this episode all week. I'm excited to drop it. I already have an episode coming out Wednesday, and I'm excited to drop this episode. I definitely see you as being a recurring guest. I cannot tell you enough how much I appreciate you coming on and how much this episode has helped me. And I'm looking forward for it to help everyone out, like everyone else out in the world. And if you don't get told enough, thank you so much. We need more humans like you for just helping us be better humans. And to all of the listeners, until next time, be genuine to yourself and kind to people. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode.